Welcome to our AuthorConnect Chat. I am your host, Danielle Brown. I am the head of strategic partnerships and editorial at BookPal. So I work with authors, publishers, agents, publicists, and other incredible industry partners at BookPal, where we believe in the transformative power of books to ignite continuous learning and growth. Stick around for more announcements at the end of this chat, including the winners of 3 signed books. But for now, I want to get to the good stuff, which is introducing our amazing guest for today. She is the Chief Energy Officer at the Resiliency Group. Since 1980, she has helped organizations and individuals transform the life of their business and the business of their life through conversations that matter and connections that count. She has become known as a master facilitator, award-winning author, and internationally recognized keynote speaker and executive coach. Please help me welcome Eileen McDargh.
Yay!
That virtual applause moment.
Right. Whoa.
Eileen, thank you so much for being here. We are so lucky to have you on this series and to be talking about your book, Burnout to Breakthrough. So for those who might not already know, can you just kick things off by talking a little bit about your book and why you wrote it?
Okay, well, I've had my own organization for 30 plus years, which is incredible because I'm only 22. Don't know how that happened. And I've been fascinated with the subject of resiliency for probably about the last 11, 12 years and its connection to communication. And over the last 4 years, forget what just happened, forget 2020. Every time I'd be asked to speak about resilience, it was in the context of burnout and that people were frying out. And in 2019, the World Health Organization finally declared burnout, and I'll use this word, a pandemic, a global occupational hazard. And just before they declared that, I was speaking to about 5,000 pharmacists about overcoming burnout with resilience. And when 5,000 pharmacists stand and applaud, they're not applauding me. They were applauding the fact that they got an idea of something that they could use. Because to be a pharmacist, particularly if you're thinking about the CVS, the Walgreens, you're standing all day, there's much you don't have control over. So when the World Health Organization declared that, I said, that's it. I got it right. That's got to be my next book. So what's interesting, Danielle, is that my book was, the final manuscript went into Barrett Kohler in December of 2019. And what happened in March of 2020? And so what now we're seeing in all of the research is what was the cause for a World Health Organization to say it's a global issue, an organizational issue. It's now enormous. People are working longer hours, and they're particularly in remote environments where they're sharing the kitchen table with their best beloved. They got the 3-year-old coming in and saying, mommy, mommy. They got the dog that needs to be walked. They're caring for it. So more than ever, this book is essential.
Yeah, I completely agree, which is why I was so excited to read it and have you on here, because I definitely think burnout is at an all-time high. It's only increasing the longer that we are working remotely and doing virtual learning and all the various nuances of our situation. So I wanted to talk to you a little bit about this foundation that you said at the very beginning of the book, where it's not really about balance. And you draw this clear line between what balance is and this term work-life balance, and really how it's more of an ebb and flow. And I think that's even more clear now that we're all staying home a lot more. So can you talk a little bit about what that means and how you kind of shifted your own view to the point of writing this book?
Okay, well, let me go back, and you set it up beautifully, Danielle, this notion, we've heard this whole term, work-life balance. And my first book, actually, in 1984, was called Work for a Living and Still Be Free to Live. And as far as we can figure out, it was the first book that ever really looked at this notion of, quote, balance, which we can say doesn't exist in authentic work. So the difference now, what I see is that if I were to ask you, in fact, Danielle, I'll ask you right now, hold up your hands to show me what balance traditionally looks like. What does it look like? There you go. Thank you very much. By the way, we have not had this conversation before, so she did this all on her own. She was not prompted. Okay, so it's the notion that life is equal. Well, that's a stupid metaphor. If a picture is worth 1,000 words, a metaphor is worth 1,000 pictures. Every time we thought of the word balance, we're trying to figure out how's equal. That does not happen in the human system. Life is never going to be equal. And now that we're into and maybe moving a little bit through this whole pandemic, we're realizing how unequal it is. So the notion of then, instead of balance, is, I think, and you use the term ebb and flow, I really like the metaphor of a sailboat. Because if you think about a sailboat, and you and I both live here in Southern California, you can see those little one-person boats out there at the ocean. Well, when you're in a sailboat and you'll have one hand over on the sheet, you got another hand over here on a tiller. And if I was standing up, you would see that I had my feet hooked under the gunwale because I got a big head of wind coming out. So that's the way life goes. And what happens when that wind shifts? What do I have to do in my little boat, Danielle. Brittany was the other one. Danielle, we threw Brittany overboard. So Danielle, if the wind shifts, what do I have to do?
You got to go with it.
I got to shift, don't I? Mm-hmm. So the wind comes up in our life all the time. So then this notion of moving from burnout to breakthrough is to begin to say what's important at this phase of my life where I am, because the wind has shifted. And if then I become aware that the wind shifts, then how do I come about? Where is it that I spend my time? Because time is not equally divided either. So what's the ebb and flow of my life? And as we're here in this right now, the context is this working from home. Many of us are discovering what's really important, what's not important. And it's a great organizational opportunity to say, you know what, we do stuff because it's the way we've always
done it.
You got it. And what we're now beginning to discover is that we have an opportunity to say, why have I always done it this way? So this is an opportunity for us to really not go back to, quote, the new normal. There's not going to be a new normal. It's to really say, what is our abnormal and how do we make this work to my personal advantage, to my organizational advantage?
Yeah, definitely. And one of the things that you talk a lot about in the book is before you start blaming your organization or blaming these outside circumstances, looking internally and seeing what you can do to reclaim some of that ebb and flow and figure out a way to grow. But when it does come to situations where maybe an organization is championing this so-called work-life balance, and it's just not as clear-cut as that, what's your advice for someone who maybe wants to help bring this new mentality and this new approach to their own workplace?
I think the first thing begins with the most human thing that you and I do is conversation. And what's happened is that our conversations traditionally in business have been just what it looks like. Okay, I got these 3 things on the agenda, check them off. And then people disperse. Or all right, so I'm in a Zoom meeting and you see these little teeny pictures of everybody. We don't really check in with people. We don't really say, what's this like? And what's happening now, and I think this is one of the positive sides, is we are now seeing where we live. We are now having an intimate look at our colleagues. And so to me, the first place where we start is with check-in. If I were a really wise leader, I want to know how are you doing? And don't do platitudes. And by the way, don't believe the loudest voice. Oftentimes it is the softest voice that we need to hear. And then say, since we're all in this together, what is it we need to do more of? What is it we need to do less of? Where is it we need to just throw that out of the boat and say, forget it? So we have some great opportunities, and it will start with conversation. And as you wisely pointed out, Danielle, it first says, what is it I'm saying to myself? Because it's not just the organization. There are things that I am saying to myself. It can be this whole negative self-talk. This is terrible. This is horrible. I have to stay because I'll never find another job. I just blah, 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 all this negative stuff. How do I reframe this to begin to say, what's my opportunity here?
Yeah, and I love how you're talking about it as an opportunity for growth and moving forward. And I'm a writer as well, and I can tell how much you appreciate the use of language because you redefine a lot of terms that might feel familiar to us in this book. And one of those is resiliency. And you talk about how it's not just bouncing back. And you give this new definition of what resiliency really looks like when you want to go from burnout to breakthrough. So can you talk a little bit about that and how we can actually shift our mindsets to that definition?
Thank you. And by the way, I really want to compliment you, Danielle, because I've done God knows how many interviews since this book came out. And you are one of the few people who actually thoroughly read that book and pulled stuff out of it. So thank you for doing that. So let's talk about this notion of resilience, because the dictionary definition, if you look at it, is what everyone would say it means to bounce back. Well, that's fine if you are a willow tree, you're a piece of steel. But for the human system, there is never anything like going back. It said you cannot enter the same river twice. The river has moved on. It's different. So for me to want to be able to go back, it's not there. So what I think of is resiliency is growing through challenge or opportunity. So you end up wiser, smarter, better on the other side. So it's about growth. But in order to grow, ultimately, resilience is about energy management. How do I have the mental, emotional, physical hardiness, the energy to be able to grow through? And if I don't, what's depleting that energy? And what can I do to regain that energy? That's the question individually and then collectively. So it's very different from what the dictionary says resilience is, or so many books about bounce back, bounce back, bounce back. Forget that.
Yeah, absolutely. And I love how you are looking at the actual consumption of energy. And you talk about this stop, look, listen approach to assess yourself while you're maybe feeling or experiencing these symptoms of burnout. So what would you suggest someone to do when they feel like they've assessed themselves, they know they're at either rock bottom or close to it in a sense, their energy levels are drained? What is their next step? What do they do?
Okay, I think the first step is to figure out where is that energy going. And I believe in doing something called a CAT scan. CAT stands for check what claims your time, assess why and how, and is it of value, and T is to take action. And this is going to sound really tedious, Danielle, but I got to tell you, for most of us, we really don't know where this precious thing called time and where does our energy go. And the first time I came up with this process, I was just astounded at what I discovered about myself, what I'm doing to me, not anybody else, what I'm doing to me. And so I take a little notepad and make 3 columns. One says time, one says what, and the other one says who. And keep just a very informal time log. And every time you change an activity, note how much time. Well, let's see, I got up and it took me, 30 minutes. That's do it in 15-minute increments. So that's 0.5 is 30 minutes. 30 minutes to get dressed. And I got a telephone call. Watch what happens in the course of the day. Watch how we deplete our energy because we don't stay focused. All of a sudden I'm sitting there and there's an email that came in. There's a what do you call it? A text message that has come in. Somebody pulled me over here for a meeting. I got to go do this. And watch what happens in the course of that day. And then if you can do this at least for 3 days, if not longer, put it down, spread them out on the coffee table, on the, counter in the kitchen, whatever, and look down and say, why am I doing that? Why am I doing that? Why am I doing it that way? And you're going to find some patterns that will tell you where that energy is going. And here's some that I found the first time I did this for myself. A couple things. Number one, I had no idea how much time I was spending trying to locate files in my office. I didn't know. And so that told me I needed to hire a professional organizer. Come in, help me make sense of this mess. And by the way, for all of you who are listening, being able to have a place of order is really essential. Don't say I work in mess. No. It is that order that allows you to feel that there's some order in the universe when everything else looks chaotic. The second thing I discovered was I was sitting on the national board and the board of directors. I had no idea, Danielle, how much time that was taking. I had no idea. And I thought, for where I am right now in my life, in my sailboat, was that of value? Wasn't. I resigned. I discovered how much time I was spending with a woman who's a widow in our neighborhood. And my husband and I always end up adopting elderly people who have no children, because when you get elderly, you need a child. You need someone to take care of. I had no idea how much time I was spending with her. Now, did I abandon her? No. But if this was my proverbial sailboat, I put her in the dinghy and visited her on occasion, but I didn't keep her in the sailboat. So we begin to get an idea of that. The other thing, which I think is really important for us when we think everything is out of order, is what is it that's happening to my physical body? We know this mentally, intellectually, we don't always do it. My exercise. What is your commitment to exercise? That's where your body refuels. So well, I don't care what you do. Get up, walk around. Don't sit at this computer for 8 solid hours looking straight ahead. Go outside. I now, believe it or not, it astounds me, I can get up early in the morning before anyone here is in my neighborhood, and I run. I run 5.5 miles. But before I run, the other piece that I work on is my head and my heart, and I do 20 minutes of meditation. And basically, that means 20 minutes of having coffee and just quieting down. I might write in my gratitude journal. And then at the end of 20 minutes, I run. So when I come back, I have my head, my heart, my body, they're all in one place. And now I can say, what is mine to do today? You don't have to do major things, just start small. But when I can begin to see something with my physical body, so it's exercise, it's sleep. And by the way, sleep doesn't mean you do your email up to the last minute, you close your little eyeballs. Doesn't mean you don't watch the news, don't do any of that stuff. Just get ready to rest. And then, of course, the other one is nutrition. That's one of the fastest ways to begin. When I can begin to control my body, then I begin to say, what else can I get into control?
That is so powerful. I'm loving this conversation, everything you're sharing. I want to make a note just to anyone watching live with us. We do have the Q&A box open. So if you have any questions you'd like to submit for Eileen, by all means do so. In the meantime, we'll just keep going through this conversation, because I think so much of what you're saying resonates with me, and I'm sure so many of our viewers. So one of the things that really stuck out to me about this book, and also about something that you said, is just this idea of reclaiming and slowing down. And actually, reclaim was one of the words that I really focused on for my 2021 intentions and what I wanted to see for myself going into this year. So when I kept seeing that come up in your book, it like was bouncing up at me every time. And you talk about kind of this idea of control and like finding ways to have better control. And I think the tracking of your time and assessing it is such a great tool to help do that and kind of take more control of over what you're spending your time on. But can you talk a little bit more about just that idea of reclaim and how that's important to growing out of that burnout?
The question is, what is of value to you now? What brings you, Danielle, to joy? I'm now going to interview you. What brings you to joy?
I guess writing.
Okay. So you know that going forward, one of the things you want to be able to carve out in that precious 24 hours that we call a day, you want to say, where is it that I get to write? It might only be for 10 minutes. It might be going and sitting on a park bench with a journal and writing ideas that come to you for 30 minutes. So that's my question to everyone who's listening is, what brings you to joy? What is it at this point in time of your life that holds value? And when I say this point in time of your life, it can shift, because remember we said, you can't enter the same river twice. Life shifts. So a number of years ago, actually it took me 6 years. It took me 6 years. It was my joy for 6 years to take care of my aging mother. And that's taking her through all of the stages, which was from assisted living to skilled nursing to long-term care to Alzheimer's units. And with that shift, this is my personal value. It might not be other people's, but my work took second place. That was, and of course my business went, it's okay, it'll come back, because that's what brought me to joy, was to be able to help mom as she eventually made the transition. So what is this phase of your life? If you got a newborn, that's a way different phase. If you got a teenager, way different phase. But what is of value to you at this phase of your life? And that's where we want to put that energy, that attention to.
Yeah, and I think it's so important to do those check-ins regularly, because you're right, every phase of life feels a little bit different. Our priorities are constantly shifting. And if we're not looking at it, we're not stopping and looking and assessing that, we'll just keep going like a cog in the machine and not reevaluating it. And then that can perpetuate that burnout, right? Because now we're exerting all of our efforts in the wrong places.
I love that when you said, the stop. So I'm going to go back, because you used it. It's the other metaphor, because I love metaphors. Now we know I love metaphors at the railroad crossing. If there's no ding, 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 it's stop, look, and listen. That's what we all learn. You got to stop. You got to look in both directions. You got to listen, because sometimes you can't see the train coming, but you can hear it. So it is to deliberately take time, stop, look, listen. What is it that I'm saying to myself? And I'll tell you, this is not in the book, but here, it's a gift to you. It's a practice that I have. And at the start of every year, I come up with, what are 2 or 3 words that I want to concentrate on. And I loved it. You said one of your words for 2020 was to reclaim. My words are gratitude, celebration, and courage. Actually, there's a 4th one, patience, because it's very hard for me to practice patience. And I know that that's one of my growth places. So what I do then is I take my intellectual, which is the work, my emotional, people I connect with, my physical body, spiritual, and then material. And at the end of every month, and I do this on my computer, and it takes like no time at all. So I say, well, how did I do this month? Where am I? And I track. And so this one little piece of paper at the end of January, I can say, okay, I read these number of books. I connected with Susan and Sam and John, and I learned this. That's a new thing. My goal is to learn something new that I've never done before, which, by the way, is a great resiliency skill. If you push yourself out to do something you've never done before, you will find how much stronger you are. And you can check it off of your bucket list or whatever. So I track that. And so I have a journal that is every month what I did, how I felt, how many, I give myself little stickers in my day timer when I exercise, and I count up the stickers. I try to track, how many ounces of water I had. Now, this is just me. It's not being anal retentive. I don't go crazy over this stuff. But what happens is at the end of the year, Danielle, when most of us, and I used to do this, where did the year go? What happened to it? when I go back and look at 12 months, month by month, it's amazing. Wow. Well, no wonder I'm tired. Look who I talked to. Look at this. And so instead of losing my life, I'm discovering how rich my life could be. But I had to teach myself that process, and it might be something that you would find of interest.
Yeah, I really appreciate that. I just want to snap at so many of the things you say because they just hit those points so head on, so perfectly. And I want to go back to one of the ideas that's kind of come up occasionally throughout these questions, which is this whole multitasking and the need to multitask and be distracted constantly. But specifically, I want to bring up this kind of a buzzword now, but Zoom fatigue, and specific to what we're dealing with now amid the pandemic. But I certainly don't think virtual events and virtual meetings are going away. So this is something we have to adapt to. How do you think we can look at that as an opportunity for growth, or how do we deal with that kind of burnout struggle?
All right. So first and foremost, Zoom fatigue is real for all of us. And I'll tell you why it's real. And it has to do back with this notion I said about communication. Human beings communicate in person. We read each other's faces. We hear tones of voices. And that gives a much deeper meaning than if on a phone is better. So if I'm sitting in a Zoom meeting, I see all these little faces, but I don't know how to read them. And a lot of times you don't see the face. When someone puts a thumbs up, you don't really know what that thumbs up means. What's it for? So what this year, actually it's a year and a month so far. So the 13 months is taken us out of what we do as human beings best and put us in an artificial situation. So I just want to make that point, and that's why it takes so much more energy. And when you're sitting looking at yourself, we don't look at ourselves and we talk. And now all of a sudden, I'm staring at myself on the screen. So let me give you some suggestions to regain control. First and foremost, don't sit on top of your computer. Take the video off. Stand up. You can still listen to what's going on, but move away. So you're not up. It's like I just moved away from you if I wanted to do this. Also, find out ways in which you can create more human interactions. And so human interactions would be, okay, before we start talking about what we're going to talk about, look around where you are and find something that is meaningful to you and nobody else. Hold it up. And you can only do this obviously in small groups. But what's interesting is it's a way of connecting. And I'll tell you who but I read this, his name is Vivek Murthy. Vivek Murthy is now, once again, our Surgeon General in the United States. And what he would do when he would have, now obviously face-to-face meetings, he didn't want them to just come in with their name, rank, and serial number. So what he did, and they would take turns, tell us, best vacation you ever had. So they would go around the room and they began to see each other as full human beings. So they didn't just solve problems, but they actually saw themselves as real people. So we can do that. We can do that in a Zoom environment. But we also know we need to, pull back. So you don't have to be on screen all the time. And sometimes it's really important that we see each other. So that's a way to begin to get some kind of control over. Right now, we might not have that much control over.
Yeah, and I love that kind of comes full circle, just talking about human connection. You mentioned earlier finding ways to kind of get little more insights and check-ins to the people on our teams. And I think you're right, we do have this window into people's homes or wherever they're working from right now. So there's so much opportunity, coming back to that resiliency definition. So that is our last question for the day. This time has gone by so fast, but Eileen, thank you so much for chatting with us and all of your amazing insights, sharing those with the BookPal community. Thank you to those of you who were able to attend live today or anyone who's watching the recording. If you haven't already, I highly recommend Eileen's book, Burnout to Breakthrough. I know she has a copy as well. And it is a powerful, interactive, engaging read. There is so much actionable advice in this book, and I already know ways that this will be helping me break through more in the coming months. So thank you so much for chatting with us. We do have signed copies that we are giving away to 3 winners, and I can announce those, but actually Eileen is doing something a little special for our giveaway this time. So I will let her share a little bit more.
Well, whoever are the 3 lucky people, and I will be very lucky to write your name in this book, but I wanted you to have something else. Remember I said I'm a big fan of metaphor. I'm also going to give to the 3 winners this book, Gifts from the Mountain, Simple Truths for Life's Complexities. It's also a Barrett Kohler book. And what happened, the way this book came up, was that my husband and I are avid backpackers for work. And this was one trip in which we didn't have my oldest daughter with us, and she's much stronger than I am. Bottom line is that we got tremendously lost up in the backcountry. It was very scary. And I had a little notebook with me, and I thought, I either have to figure out why I am on this trip, or I'm going to kill my husband. We went the wrong way. And out of that book were pieces of wisdom that I found. It won the Ben Franklin Gold. So every page has got original artwork, and it's got a single idea, a metaphor that not only comes from the world of backpacking, but also has application in our lives. And for the 3 of you who get it, if you go to my website and you find this book, scroll down, you will also find 3 what I call conversation fire starter guides. They're free. Any of you can get this. And it says, we might say, take out your garbage when you're backpacking. What does this mean for us in life? There's one for coaches, there's one for managers, and there's one for community members. So that's what they're going to also get.
Thank you so much. That is such a special bonus to this giveaway. So our winners today are Melissa C, Heidi G, and Janine P. We have your email addresses, and we will contact you for your best mailing address and contact information. But congratulations to getting not only a signed copy of Burnout to Breakthrough, but also that extra gift from Eileen. That is fantastic. To our live attendees, we will be sending out an email with the recording of this chat next week. So keep your eye out for that email, and make sure you're subscribed to our email newsletter to be the first to know about the rest of our upcoming events. Our next AuthorConnect chat will be on May 5th at 10 a.m. Pacific, 1 p.m. Eastern, where I'll be chatting with Nicholas Pierce about his book, The Purpose Path. So again, make sure you're subscribed to that newsletter and visit our website to see more. And thank you so much again, Eileen, for joining us, and we'll see everyone next time. Until then, please keep reading, keep learning, and keep growing. Thank you so much for watching.
Thank you, Danielle. And to all of you who are viewers and watchers.